Paolo Banchero is in the perfect position to become an all-NBA level player, and it seems like nobody is talking about him. Now, last year for him was cut short due to injuries, but in the time that we did see him, Banchero was having a career year, seeing highs in his scoring, his efficiency, his defense, and his rebounding. But injuries were a story of the Orlando Magic for the entire season. This was a team that was riddled with injuries to practically every key player, leaving them as a revolving lineup for new faces every single night. Last year, Orlando had just 41 wins, they had the third worst offense in the league, and they were laughably bad from three-point range, being the worst team in the entire NBA. But anybody who has seen this Orlando Magic team, and anybody who's actually sat down and watched Paolo Banchero, they know that they are much better than a 500 team, and they know that Paolo is somebody special. But everything that the Magic and Paolo Banchero are capable of, that's going to start next year, because next year is going to be a pivotal growth year in Paolo's development. Now, in my opinion, the story of Paolo Banchero actually matches that to one of a young LeBron James. Both of them were #1 overall picks who won Rookie of the Year. They are both large forwards who have taken on large burdens of their team. They've been asked to score from the inside, the outside. They've been asked to make plays, rebound, defend, and overall, they've both just seen little help in the beginning of their careers. Both Paolo Banchero and LeBron James were second-year All-Star players. Both Paolo Banchero and LeBron James were very young when they brought their teams to the playoffs for the first time. Paolo Banchero actually made the playoffs earlier in his career than LeBron James did. And I think if the Orlando Magic don't exactly handle this situation correctly, they could end up seeing a situation where Paolo Banchero leaves the Orlando Magic. Knowing how the Cleveland Cavaliers failed to put good talent around LeBron James during his first stint in Cleveland, that should be a message and a warning sign to the Orlando Magic not to do the same thing with Paolo Banchero. And while Paolo Banchero obviously isn't going to turn into LeBron James himself, I still think that there were some of those similarities between their stories. And just like a young LeBron James, Paolo Banchero is one of the brightest young stars in the league, especially for his age. So Paolo Banchero was actually 11th in total points scored per game. He would have been tied for 10th, but Jalen Brunson has more games. But amongst the top 20 players in points per game, Paolo Banchero is the youngest in that group. While his efficiency still has a ways to go, Paolo Banchero is a guy who can score in a variety of ways. He's great in transition. He can be in both parts of the pick and roll. He scores out of the post, out of the isolation. He can make it from inside or outside. He is a lethal slasher, and overall, he's even been getting to the free throw line more. And even though his efficiency still can be a lot better, Paolo Banchero actually had a career high in his true shooting percentage last season, and that's something I imagine is only going to get better. And Paolo Banchero can definitely do more than just score the ball. He's always been one of the better playmaking power forwards in the league. He's been averaging around 5 assists per game for the last 2 seasons. Like I said, he's a guy who can score in a variety of ways, but he can also make plays in a variety of ways and set up his teammates in a ton of different necessary ways. Last season was a career high in his usage rate, however, it was also a career low in his turnover rate, so he's getting the ball more and he's being asked to do more in the offense, but he's actually turning the ball over less because of it. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Paolo Banchero is an absolute menace. At the power forward position, mostly, he's around 6'10", 250 pounds with a 7'1" wingspan. He's got the speed to go up and kind of guard some of the smaller, quicker guys, but he also has the strength to go down low. I would honestly say that he could play the center position pretty well if the Magic weren't such a giant team. For his entire career, his blocks and steals do remain the same. However, Orlando's defense was still elite when he was on the court. However, they're elite with or without him, but his individual defensive rating was also the best of his entire career. With this being said, Paolo Banchero is definitely far from a perfect defender. I know Orlando Magic fans, at least in the past, have complained about his conditioning and his lack of effort sometimes on the defensive end, and I do think because of his size, he's definitely prone to getting beat by those smaller, shiftier players, but what can you do when you're 6'10", 250? To me, none of this is overly concerning, especially when you look at the fact that Paolo has to carry a huge burden on offense every single night. So 14 players last year had a usage rate above 35%, and of those 14 players, Paolo Banchero had the 5th highest usage rate in the league. And if you look at some of the top guys in the league when it comes to usage rate, of course you have your outliers, guys like SGA, guys like Wemby, guys like Giannis, but for the most part, nearly everybody in this group is an average defender. There are a few players who are this high in usage rate that are exceptional defenders. Most of them are average, or dare I would even say below average, and that kind of goes for the top guys even outside of this rank as well. So given his usage on offense, especially compared to other stars in the league, and especially given his age as well, given the fact that he's still only going to be 23 going into next season, I wouldn't call Paolo Banchero's defense a huge mark on his overall game. In fact, I still think he's a pretty good defender given what he has to do on offense every single night, but I think he still has the potential to be even more, and we'll see him become more of a defender as he gets less usage on offense. And the help that Paolo Banchero is going to get on offense next season, that is what's going to make him an elite all-NBA level player. Like I said, Banchero had the 5th highest usage rate in the league. Defenses know that the ball is going through him. They know that the Orlando Magic need him to produce any form of offense when he's on the court. On top of that, Orlando was the worst 3-point shooting team in the entire NBA. So if you're playing a team like Orlando, you can definitely sag off to help guard Paolo Banchero on the drive. And like I said, this team was laughably bad, being pretty far back compared to other teams, at least in terms of 3-point percentage. We would often see this Orlando team only really have 1 or maybe 2 solid shooters on the court, and then just like a few okay guys, and that's sometimes even including Banchero himself. So a team that doesn't have a lot of spacing, doesn't have a lot of consistency from 3, that is the kind of offense that Banchero would have to be leading. His points are trending upward. His efficiency for the most part is still trending upward. Despite everything, he is still getting better. He's getting to the line more, he's rebounding more, he's playmaking at a more efficient rate. His advanced stats like his win shares, his PER, his box plus minus, his value over replacement player, every single advanced stat you could look at for Paolo Banchero is either at a career high or was on pace to be at a career high before any injury. At 22 years old, Paolo Banchero was likely going to be an all-NBA level player if he reached the minimum required amount of games. So if anything, the NBA should be scared of Paolo because he is accomplishing so much in such a little amount of time. And now he's about to be on the best Orlando team that he has ever seen before. Now, Paolo and the Magic weren't exactly receiving a lot of media attention last year, but I think this just puts him in an even more perfect position to strike because nobody's expecting the Orlando Magic to be as good as they just might be next season, and nobody's expecting Paolo Banchero to make that all-NBA level leap. Looking at this offseason, the Magic really didn't lose a whole lot, at least from a pure player standpoint, not counting the draft picks, but on the court, they didn't really lose a whole lot. Cole Anthony, his stats and his minutes were trending downward really ever since his first or second year. You look at Gary Harris, he played less than like 50 games and he was averaging 3 points per game. You look at Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, he wasn't the 3-and-D guy that they were hoping for him to be, and his shooting definitely wasn't there like how it was for years past in Denver. So really the 3 guys that they lost, they weren't big losses, but if you look at the 2 guys they brought in, these are huge guys for the Magic and specifically for Paolo Banchero. The first one is Tyus Jones, and I am a Suns fan and I can tell you just how important of a player Tyus Jones was for us last year. He was very crucial in keeping the tempo of the game going. He was huge in helping the team, anytime like a run was scored against us or anytime that, things kind of fallen out of order. Tyus Jones is a guy you can give the ball to and you can run the offense through him. Last year, he averaged about 10 points, 5 assists, and a steal. According to his on-off ratings, he was still about a positive defender for the Phoenix Suns, and that says a lot because they were a pretty rough team last year, especially on the defensive end of the ball. But on top of all that, he was actually second in the league in his assist to turnover ratio, so about every time he had a turnover, he had about 4.5 assists. That is absolutely insane, and second shy just to Tyrese Halliburton. This man takes care of the ball, he makes the right read, and he makes the right pass. But on top of that, he can shoot the ball. Last year, he made around 2 threes per game, shooting just about 41%. That is pretty solid, and that would actually be the best 3-point shooter on the Orlando Magic, and honestly, they don't really have anybody else in comparison because nobody on the team even shot close to 41% last year. So you add in a guy who can make plays, you add in a guy who can create offense, you add in a guy who can run the offense. Now Paolo Banchero doesn't have to have the ball in his hands all the time. It's a guy who Paolo Banchero can run actions with, or Paolo Banchero can be more effective off the ball in the post, in transition, whatever. Or at the very least, Tyus Jones is just another guy that Banchero can kick the ball out to, and I guarantee he's going to hit at a higher rate than anybody else the Orlando Magic had last season. And Tyus Jones was one of the more underrated free agency signings last year. I knew he was eventually going to go to a new team, didn't know where, but I know whoever got him was going to get an absolute beast of a player. But the real shining moment of this offseason for the Orlando Magic is their trade for Desmond Bane. So not going into what the trade itself was, I want to talk about what Bane does on the court for this Magic team, and he does a lot. And he does all of this without sacrificing any pivotal parts of this Magic team or of this Magic culture. At 6'5", 215 pounds, Desmond Bane is the perfect addition to a team that likes their bigger, stronger, kind of defensive-focused guards. Last year, Bane averaged around 19 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists on good efficiency, and Bane's kind of a guy who can just do a little bit of everything for you. He's a great rebounder at his position, he's a good secondary ball handler, and he can just also put the ball in the basket. Like Tyus Jones, Desmond Bane is a very solid shooter. Like Jones, he also made 2 3-pointers per game, with Bane shooting around 39%, which would again make him the best shooter on this Orlando Magic team. On catch and shoot opportunities, something I'm expecting that we'll see him do even more this season with playing alongside a guy like Jones or Banchero, of course, he shot 42% on those opportunities, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see Bane actually have a pretty solid shooting year, despite the fact that defenses are going to have to hone on him being the main shooter on the court. The additions of Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones are going to be huge for Paolo Banchero. Not only do they take the ball out of Paolo's hands and they give him someone to play off of, a legit playmaker or another scoring option, but these are two dynamic players. Yes, they can both shoot the ball, but they can both playmake at a decent level, or at least at a secondary level. They can do multiple things that are going to help out to this Orlando Magic team. They're not just going out there and getting an older guy like KCP or a guy like Seth Curry who can only shoot the ball. They're getting guys who can shoot, but guys who can also score, also help out teammates, also play defense. So they're not really sacrificing a lot from a playmaking, a defensive, rebounding, whatever standpoint you want to look at it. They've only gotten better through these two acquisitions. So now you give Paolo Banchero one of the better drivers in the league. You're going to give him 2 outstanding shooters. You're going to give him some secondary playmakers, because that's something the Orlando Magic were also lacking last season, was playmaking, especially playmaking outside of Banchero. They're still going to have a guy like Jalen Suggs, maybe coming off the bench, maybe splitting time with Jones, hard to say yet, but you're still going to have those guys. So now suddenly Banchero doesn't have to do as much. But now that Banchero doesn't have to do as much, we're going to see him be a little bit more efficient. We're going to see him be able to focus on other parts of his game. So that's why I think he's not only going to be a better defender, but he's going to be a more efficient player. Banchero now has 2 40% three-point shooters he can kick the ball out to. That's going to help his three-point shooting. His own scoring is going to get helped out, because now defenses can't just focus on him because of either the three-point shooting aspect or because of a playmaking aspect. Now that he doesn't have to put as much up on offense, maybe he can defend with a little bit higher energy, maybe he can put more into the paint. I generally wouldn't be surprised to see just about every single major stat for Banchero get better next season. I think he's going to be a better scorer. I think his rebound is probably going to stay the same, if not get better. I think he's going to become a better playmaker. Obviously, I think he's going to become more efficient. And I think he's finally going to be able to make a defensive leap with a guy like Bane and with a guy like Jones helping him out on offense. I think it's more than likely that Paolo Banchero is going to become an all-NBA level player next season, and that's just because of his own improvement, his own trend, and some of the moves that the Magic made this offseason. But I've done all of this without mentioning a certain teammate named Franz Wagner, a guy who was absolutely elite last season and a guy who definitely deserves a video of his own, so definitely stay tuned for that. Let me know what you guys think about Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and the Orlando Magic. I think this is going to be a really good team next year. I think we could see them in top 4, top 5 conversations in the East, possibly maybe even a little bit better than that. The Eastern Conference is wide open, and Orlando can definitely take advantage of it. I think it's going to be a huge year of growth now that they can actually shoot the 3 ball. That is it for this one. If you liked the video, you know what to do, and I will catch you all next time.